Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Here's a quiet secret about love. Sometimes the relationship has not ended, but the way you learned to love has expired. You may still care. You may still feel loyal. You may still remember the years, the sacrifices, the tender moments, the promises, but something in your heart begins to ask for a more truthful kind of love. Not less love, not colder love, not love that has become selfish and detached. A love mature enough for the soul you are becoming. And that can be confusing because when love changes, many women assume something's wrong. They may wonder, why does what used to feel romantic now feel incomplete? Why does what used to feel loyal now feels heavy? And why does what used to feel like devotion now feels like I'm disappearing? But what if the problem is not that love has failed? What if the soul has reached a more advanced lesson in love? The key to soul progress is understanding that love matures as the soul matures. The love we needed in one season may not be the love our soul is ready to practice in the next. Today, we are looking at how love changes over the course of our lives through relationships, disappointments, caretaking, commitment, loss, and midlife awakening. Most of us do not begin with soul love. We grow into it. We begin with forms of love that teaches us safety, belonging, desire, loyalty, sacrifice, forgiveness, and responsibility. Each kind of love teaches something important, but not every kind of love is complete. Some forms of love are early classrooms. The soul is always learning how to love. That is why midlife can be so spiritually important. Midlife often reveals what earlier love taught us, what it cost us, what it awakened in us, what love now has to become if the soul is going to keep advancing. And Jesus instructed us to love others as ourselves. And that is not a small teaching. It is not sentimental. It is spiritually exacting. It means love must become rightly ordered. It means love of God, love of neighbor, love of self cannot be enemies. They must become aligned. So the question today is not only, do I love this person? The deeper question is, what kind of love is this experience teaching my soul to grow into now? There are many forms of love we've learned through over a lifetime. For example, there's attachment love, which says, stay close so I feel safe. This is often where love begins. It teaches bonding, connection, and the need for emotional security. But if attachment love never matures, we may confuse closeness with wholeness. And then there's approval love. And that says, if you choose me, praise me, need me, or admire me, then I know I matter. And many women learned this early. They became helpful, agreeable, strong, pleasant, responsible, or endlessly understanding. But approval love eventually asks the soul to discern the difference between being loved and being useful. And then there's romantic love. And that says, I feel awakened when I'm seen by you. Romantic love can open the heart. It can bring tenderness, joy, hope, desire. But romantic love can also become a mirror of unmet longing. Sometimes we are not only loving the person, we are loving the version of ourselves we feel when that person desires us. Loyal love says, I will stay, I will endure, I will keep showing up. Loyal love can be noble, and it can carry marriages and families and friendships and caregiving seasons and difficult years. But loyal love must mature because loyalty without truth can become quiet imprisonment. And then there's caregiving love. And that says, I will tend to what is needed. This can be sacred. It can be compassionate and Christ-like. But caregiving love becomes distorted when one person's soul disappears beneath everyone else's needs. Then, as the heart is cultivated, love can begin to mature into soul love. And soul love says, I love you as a soul, not as someone who must complete me, rescue me, need me, obey me, or remain unchanged so I can feel secure. Soul love is human love refined by divine love. Divine love is not emotional intensity. It is not people-pleasing. It is not rescuing. It is not possessing or being possessed. Divine love seeks truth, harmony, mercy, freedom, right action, and the upliftment of the soul. Love is one of the greatest classrooms for life. Every form of love teaches, but as the soul grows, the lesson changes. Nadia is in her late 40s. And when she first met her husband, the love felt exciting, alive, and full of possibilities. She loved the way he looked at her. She loved feeling chosen. She loved the energy of being wanted. In those early years, romantic love made her feel awakened. But over time, life became more ordinary. There was bills to be paid and work demands and aging parents and children's needs and fatigue and health concerns and the long repetition of daily responsibilities. The relationship did not end, but the form of love changed. Nadia kept waiting for the early feeling to return. She wanted the long conversations, the flirtation, the emotional attentiveness, the feeling of being pursued. When those things were missing, she began to wonder if something was wrong with the relationship. Some things did need attention. There were conversations they had avoided. There were patterns that needed to mature. But one evening, after feeling disappointed again, Nadia realized that her soul was asking a deeper question. She was not only missing romance, she was missing the version of herself she felt when romance made her feel special. And that realization was uncomfortable. She saw that romantic love had awakened something in her, but now her soul was asking for a more grounded love, a love that could tell the truth, a love that could speak without accusation, a love that could ask for closeness without demanding that another person rescue her sense of worth. It was like realizing that the candlelight was beautiful, but now the relationship needed a hearth. Candlelight creates atmosphere. A hearth creates warmth, steadiness, and a place where real life can gather. Nadia did not need to reject romantic love. She needed to mature. So instead of saying, "You never make me feel loved anymore," she began to say, "I miss feeling emotionally close to you. I do not want to blame you, but I do want us to pay attention to what we have stopped maturing." That was a difficult kind of love. It was not the love that waits to be rescued by romance. It was love that participates in truth. That is soul advancement on the path of higher awareness and attunement with one's soul. So Nadia's soul lesson was that love cannot remain dependent on emotional intensity. Intensity has its place, but it can awaken the heart. It can open longing, but intensity alone cannot carry the soul into mature love. Mature love asks for presence after an excitement phase fades. It asks for honesty after the fantasy dissolves. It asks for responsibility after the first glow becomes ordinary life. This is where the teachings, spiritual teachings from the Bible, from a pastor, from something that inspires you in terms of what you're reading, comes into alignment. Because what we know in many of the great wisdom teachings is that they point us toward mastery of the lower self, purification of motive, right use of energy, harmony, and alignment with the divine presence within. The Atman, the Christ self, your soul essence of who you are, coming into alignment with that spirit spark, which is your soul, that's united to Christ. In ordinary relationship language, that means we have to ask, what is moving through my love right now? Is it divine love? Is it fear? Is it insecurity? Is it the need to be chosen? Is it resentment? Is it a longing for God that I am trying to force another person to satisfy? That last question matters. Sometimes we ask human love to carry a spiritual hunger that only God can truly hold. Nadia began to understand that her heart did not need to become less loving. It needed to become more cultivated. Cultivating the heart meant noticing the difference between wanting closeness and demanding completion. It meant asking for emotional connection without making her husband responsible for her entire sense of aliveness. Her prayer simply was, God, help my love become truthful, not demanding. Help me ask for connection without losing myself. Help me realize divine love so I do not turn human love into my only source. Because divine love, God has an abundance of, but we've never tapped into it. We never have asked God to give me a sense of what divine love it is, how to experience it mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Being in a conversation with God, helping God to warm your heart, to feel the love, to feel that love that was in Jesus, to feel it within you. We can ask. And by the grace of God, God shows us, guides us, and directs us. And that prayer began to change the quality of her love. That conversation that she was continuously having with her Lord helped her to shift. So let's take Ruth from a different angle here. And she's in her late 50s. She has spent most of her adult life being the responsible one. She helped raise her younger siblings. She cared for her children. She supported her husband through career changes. She checked on her mother. She remembered birthdays, medications, appointments, family tensions, and everyone's emotional temperature. People described her as loving, and she was. But Ruth's love had also become a role. She was the one people called when something went wrong. She was the one who listened, the one who was the fixer, the one who adjusted things and adjusted her schedule, the one who said, "It's fine." Remember, I've said that throughout some of these episodes? That's a common language that is used by women. It's fine, even when it's not fine. For many years, caregiving, love, gave Ruth a sense of purpose. She felt needed, and being needed felt close to being loved. But in midlife, something began to change. When her adult daughter called, Ruth braced herself. She loved her daughter, but she felt her body tighten because she knew the pattern. Her daughter would vent. Ruth would listen. Ruth would offer advice. Her daughter would reject the advice. And Ruth would end the call feeling drained and vaguely guilty. After one of these calls, Ruth sat in her car in a grocery store parking lot and whispered, "Why do I feel less loving when I try so hard to be loving?" That question opened a door. Ruth began to see that caregiving love had taught her compassion, but now her soul was asking for discernment. She did not need to stop caring. She needed to stop confusing care with emotional over-responsibility. It was like carrying a basket that belonged to the whole family. But over time, everyone had placed their stones in it. And at first, Ruth thought carrying the basket proved her love. But eventually the weight bent her posture, and she could no longer walk freely. So love asked her to put down what was never hers to carry. The next time her daughter called in distress, Ruth listened with love, but she did not rush into fixing. She said, "I hear how hard it is. I love you. And also trust that you can take the next right step. I can listen for a few minutes, but I cannot carry this for you." Her voice shook when she said it, but something in her soul stood up. That was not rejection. That was mature love. Ruth's soul lesson was that caregiving love has to be purified by truth. Care can be holy. Service can be holy. Sacrifice can be holy. Jesus modeled love as service, mercy, forgiveness, and compassion. But Jesus also withdrew to prayer. He also spoke truth. He also did not let the demands of others define his divine assignment. That matters. Loving others as ourselves means that self is included in the circle of love. Not worshiped, not indulged, not made superior, but included. Ruth had to learn that if love consistently requires the loss of her own soul breath, then something in that love needs to mature. The soul cannot advance while it is using love to avoid truth. Cultivating the heart is not just about becoming softer. Sometimes cultivating the heart means becoming clearer. It means removing the weeds of guilt, control, resentment, and false responsibility so divine love can grow in clean soil. Ruth began to practice one question before helping. Is this mine to carry or mine to bless? That question changed her relationships. Some things were hers to carry. Many things were not. But many things were hers to bless with prayer, truth, compassion, and trust in the other person's soul journey. That is soul love. Soul love does not abandon people. Soul love refuses to replace God in another person's life. This matters because love is one of the soul's primary training grounds. We do not become spiritually mature only by reading and praying and meditating and understanding sacred ideas and scriptures. Those practices matter, but the real test of spiritual growth often happens in relationships. Can I love when I am disappointed? Can I tell the truth without cruelty? Can I set the boundary without closing my heart? Can I forgive without returning to the old pattern? Can I serve without needing to be indispensable? Can I let another person grow without controlling their path? Can I love another as myself, as Jesus instructed, without making myself disappear? And this becomes the point again and again when we're walking a spiritual path. And that path is ultimately towards mastery of the lower nature, purification of motive, divine love, harmony, right action, awakening to the divine presence that exists within you, your I am presence, the Christic energy. And that means love is not just a feeling. Love is a force that educates the soul. Every relationship asks, what quality of love are you learning now? Some relationships teach tenderness. Some teach discernment. Some teach courage. Some teach restraint. Some teach forgiveness. Some teach release. Some teach patience. And some teach us to stop mistaking dependency for love. Stop mistaking sacrifice for holiness. And some teach us that the heart must be cultivated before it can carry higher form of love. There are three barriers that often keep love from maturing. The first barrier is confusing intensity with love. Intensity can feel powerful, chemistry, longing, emotional highs and lows, the relief after conflict, the desire to be chosen, the fear of being left. All of that can feel like love. But intensity is not always love. Sometimes it is attachment. Sometimes it is anxiety. Sometimes it is a nervous system mistaking uncertainty for passion. To work with this barrier, ask, does this love make me more truthful, peaceful, whole over time? Or does it keep me emotionally activated and spiritually off center? That question helps the heart discern. And the second barrier is confusing sacrifice with holiness. Many women were taught that the more they give, the more loving they are. But not every sacrifice is sacred. Some sacrifice is generous and freely chosen. Some sacrifice is fear, wearing a religious or moral costume. To work with this barrier, ask, is this sacrifice expanding my soul, or is it slowly making me resentful, hidden, and depleted? A sacred sacrifice may be difficult, but it does not require the death of truth. The third barrier is confusing familiarity with divine alignment. This one is subtle. Sometimes we assume that because a pattern is familiar, it must be loving. We know how to be the listener. We know how to be the fixer. We know how to be the patient one. We know how to be the one who adjusts. The role feels familiar, so we mistake it for love. But familiarity is not the same as divine love. To work with this barrier, ask yourself this. Am I staying in this pattern because it is aligned with God, truth, and love? Or because I do not know who I am without this role? And that question can be uncomfortable, but it is spiritually useful. These barriers are not signs of failure. They are invitations to heart cultivation. They show us how to love. They show us where to love. They show us where love is still mixed with fear and where divine love is asking to refine the soul. A cultivated heart is not a perfect heart. It is a heart that is willing to be taught by love. Here is a simple practice. Before reacting in a relationship, pause and ask 3 questions. What kind of love is operating in me right now? This helps you name whether the love is attachment love, approval love, romantic longing, loyal love, caregiving love, or soul love. Second, what is this relationship experiencing right now? What is this relationship experience trying to teach my soul? And this shifts the question from blame to growth. It does not excuse harm. It does not deny the need to be addressed, but it helps you look beneath the surface and ask, what is the lesson in love here? The third, what would divine love do if fear were not distorting my response? This is a deepening questioning. Divine love may ask you to speak. It may ask you to soften. It may ask you to stop rescuing. It may ask you to forgive, to set boundaries. It may ask you to release an old fantasy, an old hurt. It may ask you to bless someone without caring what belongs to them. A practical prayer might be, God, help me love. Help my love mature. Help me recognize the difference between fear and love, control and care, loyalty and truth, attachment and divine love. Cultivate my heart so that what moves through me, blesses, frees, and aligns the soul. And that prayer does not ask the relationship to change. It asks the heart to become clearer instrument of divine love. And that is the deeper work. So perhaps the question is not only, have I loved well? Perhaps the deeper question is, how has love been trying to grow me? Nadia, romantic love, had to mature into truthful love. Ruth's caregiving love had to mature into discerning love. And each of us is being invited into a higher classroom of love. Not love as performance, not love as emotional dependency, not love as control, not love as self-erasing, not love as being needed, but love as a sacred pen of refinement. Love as the place where the heart is cultivated. Love as the place where fear is exposed, transmuted, dissolved. Love as the place where the soul learns discernment, mercy, courage, release, truth, harmony. Love as the place where we become more connected to God and more capable of loving others as ourselves. This is why the love you needed then may not be the love your soul needs now. Not because the earlier love was meaningless, but because the soul is still advancing. And the next key to soul progress is remembering that love matures as the soul matures. Every relationship becomes part of our education in love. When we allow love to cultivate the heart, refine the soul, and teach us how to love with greater truth, freedom, mercy, and harmony. Something to think about. Bye for now. And you can find my podcast episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at drjudithmla.com.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.